Let's talk about the iPhone Air. I've had this for roughly just over a week now. So this video I thought I'd share with you in terms of my current findings of the Air, how I got on with it over the last 10 days, the pluses and minuses, and just at the end, what I'm going to change this for if I decide to change it, that is. So keep watching and let's dive in to what I think about this phone. So first things first, let's cover the obvious change is that it's design. It is a gorgeous looking design. It's nice and thin, thinner than most iPhones today, and way thinner than the iPhone 17 Pro, as well as the base iPhone 17 as well. Now that form factor obviously has some compromises in terms of its battery life, as well as the plateau, they call it at the top here, with its single lens camera. The other advantage is that you get a 6.5 inch display rather than the 6.3 inch display that you get from the base iPhone or the iPhone Pro. So if you do want to have a bigger screen phone, then the Max is the only one this year to go for, whereas this sits in between the two. For me though, I find with its thinness, it is easier to grip than the Pro 6.3 inch model, but there are times where you have to reach to the top and then it becomes a bit of a more two-handed operation. But thanks to its thinness, the general bigger screen size isn't as big as you think. And I have had a Max in the past and that is quite unwieldy if you're not a big fan of bigger screen sized phones. This little halfway house between those two screen sizes is actually a little bit more acceptable, if a little bit bigger in size generally overall. Now that just over 5mm of thinness is obviously overshadowed by the camera bump that's at the top there and its camera, and more still if you do decide to put a case on it. So if you are thinking of getting the phone purely for its thinness, that's only really a thing if you are considering of either going bare bones and no case at all, or going for the most thinnest 1mm size cases instead. If you plan on throwing on a much thicker case, that thinness appeal completely goes overnight. And I did find myself taking this phone out of its case just to appreciate its thinness every now and then. Cases like this iPhone Air case from Quadlock, obviously its thinness is completely overshadowed by the Quadlock case. So if you are thinking of getting a case for this, you definitely need to consider a thin one. And I'll be covering a few of those cases on this channel in the very near future. For me, battery hasn't actually been an issue. You can see here my average use hasn't really reached dead zero throughout the day. And that was with some quite general heavy use and some general light use. You can see there's some charging when I've been using wireless CarPlay in the car and the phone's been put on a charger. But other than that, I'd say if your active screen time is roughly between 6 and 5 hours per day, then this phone battery really isn't an issue, as some reviews do make out. You definitely can get by with it, and especially if you turn on some of the battery management systems that are already available in iOS 26. So battery really is not an issue if your screen time is roughly in those areas. If it's less, then even better. But if it's more, you might want to consider the battery bank that Apple provides, or you can buy ones a little bit cheaper from Anker and some other brands out there as well. Wireless charging though, I've not had any problems with it. On the back, the magnetism on the back has been great, and because it is slightly lower, it doesn't interfere with too many wireless charging pads, which is quite a bonus as well. But generally I'd normally reach to roughly around between 20 and 40% by the early evenings, and then by bedtime it's roughly about 20 to 30% anyway, and I was getting that on my 16 Pro, sometimes even worse on the 16 Pro as well. So generally positive outcome for the battery there for the iPhone Air. Thanks to its thinness and its battery and most of the circuitry being up underneath the plateau area at the top of the phone, heat wise I never really felt it, but through charging and things like that I never really felt the heat on this top area that much at all, and you'll definitely feel it even less if you were to throw this in a case. But I did love the overall lightness compared to the Pro models, which this year are getting even slightly heavier. Next is sound. This is another section that is a con for the iPhone Air. The one speaker at the very top here is the only one that you get. You don't get dual speakers on this device, and for that the output is pretty much okay, but it is a lot more tinnier in terms of its sound. The bass isn't there as it is in the Pro model, for example, as well as the base model. So if you do want to use the phone with external speakers a lot more, then you might benefit from the Pro or the base model for its dual speakers. The biggest con for me though is it's one single lens. This is a 1 to 2 times main camera, and you have no ultra wide and no telephoto support whatsoever. You obviously have digital zoom up to 10x, but from 2x it's actually going to be digital base, and the quality would degrade quite severely compared to optical zoom from the Pro. For me though, I do use ultra wide quite a lot in my content, so not having that secondary ultra wide lens is a little bit of a deal breaker for this phone for me. Whereas I think I could get away with not having the zoom functionality from the telephoto camera on the Pro, which was a feature I've kind of rarely used. One element I found recently is the USB-C port at the bottom. Charging wise, its output is very similar to the other phones this year. However, it does only transfer at USB 2.0 speeds. The Pro is USB 3, and the base and the Air will output at 2.0 USB speeds. Now what this means is a lot slower transfer if you're transferring large files. So if you are a content creator running in 4K and those files are quite long and lengthy, then the transfer might be a few minutes instead of a few seconds. Now for me, that's not a deal breaker. I've been using the DJI Pocket 3 as well as the Insta360 Go 2 cameras, and both of those actually have USB 2.0 speeds anyway from their output, so it's really not the end of the world if you're prepared to wait. But there's one feature that isn't available on the Air through this port, and that is it doesn't have DisplayPort out. So you can't plug this phone into a device that uses HDMI, for example, such as plugging into a TV. You won't get any display feed out of this port. Now I noticed that by using this phone with the Oddcast Mirror Touch adapter, plugged it in, didn't work. Plugged it into my 16 Pro, it did. So that just shows you that this port does not support DisplayPort out, which is really quite a bit of a deal breaker in terms of my kind of content. Another negative is that it does not come with cinematic mode for the front and rear facing camera. So if you do use cinematic mode in video, that option isn't available, which I find a little bit weird for the front facing camera, seeing that the camera is shared across all 3 phones this year, but they've decided not to support it in the Air, which is quite a weird omission. So if you're after that bokeh effect, that's actually what's going on here in this video, then I think you will want that feature from your iPhone 17, and to do that you'll need the Pro or the base model instead. You do have portrait mode though in its front and rear facing camera, so you can get that bokeh effect in the back in both portrait and rear facing camera, so it's only really a concern if you want this feature in video instead. As I said earlier, the MagSafe charging is slightly slower as well, but honestly I did not really notice that much of a difference. So generally, if you do walk into the store and you handle these phones, you definitely do appreciate its thinness, its lightness, and it is a very nice looking phone. That is definitely a great alternative to their previous models and quite a lot of the series that we've seen probably over the last 5 years. For me, I wanted to try something a little bit different, something a little bit unique, and I thought the Air could actually fulfill that, but I was very unsure of its camera and did it limit me in terms of the kind of content I wanted to record with its single main camera. Now, using this quite a lot over the weekend, I did notice its flaws and its limitations, and for that, it's now making me think about changing to a different iPhone. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can make do with the base iPhone. The reason being, I'm really not a fan of the Pro, mainly because it's two-tone colors, which is going to get obsolete once you put a case on the back anyway, so that's not the big deal. They don't do an ultra black version like here. That would have been much better, I think, especially with filming and you're shooting against glass that I'm doing a lot often. A black phone is not going to cause that much glare and reflection in the glass of the products that you record onto. So for me, it needs to be a dark phone, and they don't actually do a dark option other than the blue model of the iPhone Pro. So the blue one would be my go-to, but personally, I'd rather it be black. The base offers the ultra wide, and I don't really have a massive use for the telephoto lens. So I really do think the base model will tick all the boxes, just as long as it performs out better than the iPhone 16 Pro that I'm currently recording on right now. Going through benchmarks, it does look like it is pretty much level pegging with the 16 Pro. with a little advancements in some certain areas. So with that, I do feel comfortable to go from the 16 Pro to a 17 base model, and then hopefully the iPhone Air Gen 2 will see some improvements this time next year. So I'll send this Air back, and then I'll upgrade to the iPhone base, and I'll see how that goes over the next 2 weeks. And maybe I'll give you my impressions on the base iPhone over the Air. And is it worth upgrading all the way back to the Pro afterwards? So stay tuned to the channel, and hopefully I'll bring that to you as well. I guess the one thing I would miss from the Pro is only the telephoto, the faster USB-C input, and the LiDAR sensor for better focus work generally in video and photos. Other than that, the phone's pretty much the same, I would say. Obviously the bigger battery, but I don't really utilize the full capacity of that battery anyway. And obviously you get a little bit more RAM with the Pro and a little faster CPU as well along the way. But for general use in terms of capturing content, I really think the base model will definitely be the one. As for the Air 2 or second gen next year, what I'd like to see is them to put in either a single lens with ultra wide support or a dual lens for the ultra wide lens as well. Then following, I like to have at least dual speakers. That's something that they could probably do, even if they have to make it slightly thicker. That would be a nice addition. And then at least include the cinematic mode in both the front and rear facing camera. And then I may even consider the Air at that point then. But for now, I have to say goodbye to this one, and hopefully in another video I'll show you my thoughts on the base model iPhone 17. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. If it has, give us a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions about the Air, and I'll do my best to answer them. If you like my content and you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by sending us a super thanks down below, or you can hype this particular video on YouTube as well, or you can check out my QR code up here to buy me a coffee, and you can support me there too. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.